All right, good morning, Morai Rabotai. Bez Hashem Mincha is going to be 7:40. Please be on time. The learning today is the Ilui Nishmat, Yochanan Yoa ben Sarah Istat. We now, we finished the halachot of Amira Legoi for what we were doing. Those that listened carefully gained, I'm sure, a tremendous amount of knowledge in Amira Legoi. We're going to move on to a new set of halachot, which is very interesting and obviously a very expansive topic, which is carrying on Shabbat. Something that a lot of people are not so aware of, and it becomes very relevant, especially in the summer months where people are on vacations and also local. We're going to discuss various concepts, various ideas, so a person should be educated in these halachot, which of course are, very important. The first and the most basic of halacha is the Torah prohibition of carrying. This is a very unfortunate reality, and what we're going to discuss today is very textbook cases. We're not getting into modern day eruvin. We will get to it eventually, but we want to discuss a case, no eruv, just textbook. There's something called the Reshut HaRabim, and there's something called the Reshut HaYachid. A Reshut HaRabim is a public domain, and a Reshut HaYachid is a private domain. But those terminologies are very loose terminologies. When you think private domain, especially if you're in business, you think it's owned by an individual versus owned by the masses. That's not what we mean. When we say a public domain, we don't mean it's owned by the public. You could even in halakha have a Reshut HaRabim that's actually owned by one person. And you could have a Reshut HaYachid, a private domain that's owned by 100 people. It has nothing to do with the ownership of the domain, but rather the physical structure of the domain. Reshut HaYachid is always defined as walls. A place that is walled is called Reshut HaYachid. So certainly a house, even if it's owned by the entire Queens community, owns one singular house, that is called the Reshut HaYachid. A Reshut HaRabim is a street that's opened. We'll define it much more sharply as we move along, but essentially a very big street is called the Reshut HaRabim. To carry in a Reshut HaRabim, in a place where there is no eruv, as I said, we'll discuss where there is a eruv, to carry 4 amot, which is the equivalent about of 8 feet. Anything, whether it's a key, whether it is something heavy, something light as a feather, it doesn't make a difference. Carrying Reshut HaRabim 4 amot, so I take a few steps and I walk with the item, I violated a Torah violation of carrying on Shabbat. Not only that, there's a second and distinct prohibition. Even if you don't carry 4 amot, if you take from a public domain to a private domain, anything, even throw something from one domain to another domain, it is a violation of Shabbat on the biblical level, a Torah violation of Shabbat. Or the other direction, you take from a private domain and you throw it into a public domain, it would also be a violation. Or if you step foot from the private domain with something in your pocket to the public domain, that would also be a violation. When we say carry things, we don't mean the clothing a person wears is not called carrying. The whole melacha is what was similar in what was done in the Mishkan, which is carrying something that's called in Hebrew a masoy, which is a burden, something that has weight that is not considered nullified to the person. So if he wears a hat, for example, that's not called carrying. If he wears a jacket, it's not called carrying. He's wearing his shoes, not carrying. But if he has a key in his pocket, that is carrying. Or if he's holding on to talit, that is carrying. Or if he's walking with a cane, for example, let's not talk about where he needs it to walk, just he's looking at like the olden day canes, which were for prestige, that is called carrying. All of those examples are violations. He walks 4 amot in the Reshut HaRabim, he violated, or if he moved from Reshut HaYachid to Reshut HaRabim, it's also a violation. Bez Hashem, tomorrow we'll elaborate more on these two concepts and expand on it further. Baruch Adonai.